There's no ability to interact beyond the little roles that have been created for you by the platforms themselves. And similarly, there is no regulatory push on redistribution of value, right? So competition is not addressed. We're not really thinking critically about tax because we're in the innovation hype cycle. So there's no real meaningful thing about redistributing that value. And I think that's where the issue lies in many ways, because uh, payment of wages is not sufficient value creation for the people, or as users is not the. And I mean, these are very much the Manchester goods of, we do the grunt work, we provide the raw materials, they get repackaged and then sold back to us, right? And I think that we've seen this story before, and I don't know why we are allowing it to go as far as we have.
Below this creamy elite of professional consultants who openly discuss about how they use AI, etc., lies a vast stratum of micro and mid-sized commercial players. And some of these are not 100% commercial players, because there are also ideologically motivated players, and there are people who want to just earn a livelihood. So these players, they offer influence enhancement services to different kinds of political actors and also commercial entities. And these entrepreneurs who have been trying and testing a range of election campaign services with the use of digital technologies have also started taking orders for deepfakes and other things.
Obviously, the cost is to humans because culture is the source of the self, and this is all content which is essentially expression, communication, so it hits right back at you. But then, I'm also of the opinion that what one may call degraded content may not be degraded for someone else, and that's the subjectivity of content itself, right?
I would say that slop is not the opposite of authenticity. Slop versus authenticity is a false binary. There is no need to import moral panics about authenticity from elsewhere. I say this because also, as Akshat mentioned, some of these cultural creations have always been a messy terrain of different kinds of appeals, right? The original imitation binary has been there for a very long time, and so is the distinction between grotesque and pleasant. And there again, there is the subjective assessment of what is pleasant and what is grotesque. And these contestations have been part of our social fabric for a very long time.
There was recently a study which is like the US invested so many, I think $30 billion in getting computers in every classroom in the States. And then, the cognitive abilities of this generation are lower for the first time than the previous generation. So there is a very real, and I mean, there are studies and studies on like how the consumption of this kind of information is making us stupider. And so there is a huge cognitive decline that I think we as as a people have to reckon with.
When the output generated is being displaced not by another output but by the displacement of the role itself, this whole concept fails essentially. And we currently do not have tools in the bag to address that displacement. And falling back on copyright, which is what is happening around the world right now with some 150 lawsuits, is just a distraction. It's procrastination essentially, right? You're just trying to avoid how to address this large scale issue, which cannot be addressed by a tool that was solely meant for commodifying a particular object, and then sort of using that to sustain the author anyway, which failed even when it was existing.
One of the areas or ideas that we work on and are very bullish on is the idea of data cooperatives, which is that cooperatives exist. 1 out of 10 people globally is a member of a co-op. And they already do a lot of the co-governing, which is like one member, one vote. They do things like pooling of resources, whether it's labor or capital. So how do you apply that to data? And there have been bits which are of interest. Karen Howe's book also talks about smaller models and how you can have communities build things that go from where meeting community need to creating models that can be eyeballed in a small instance by communities. And this is not new. Like, we've seen this kind of shared stewardship across different kinds of moments. But there is a malicious intentionality in the way that the AI governance discourse is framed, which is like, it's too high level, it's too big for ordinary people to meaningfully govern, and it can only be done through those top-down frameworks of whether it's copyright or whether it's competition or whether it's some other data protection.
We propose this concept of ethical scaling. Ethical scaling is about articulation, because scaling is not about volume, it's about articulation. And ethical scaling means modulating capitalist data hunger and channeling back the benefits of scaling toward protecting marginalized, vulnerable, and historically disadvantaged communities by involving these communities in labeling data, bringing their contextual and embodied language, and also making this annotation process an iterative one through collaborative coding.
I think that, I mean, again, like I said, like, for me, the short answer is that these cannot be the only source of truth, and we have to make sure that the offline architectures around these technologies remain robust and well-funded, so that they are able to create the necessary information, fact-checking, resilience that emerges. And there should also be, I think, the question of where are these technologies necessary. We're still in a position where we can roll some of this back. Like, if we decide that this is maybe okay for telemedicine but not okay for insurance, which I think should be the case, like, how do we make sure that we are able to create necessary guardrails, and I don't like that word at all, but like necessary blocks for the use of this technology. So I do believe in red lines. I mean, the EU AI Act, which has been since watered down, had red lines about where you can and cannot use AI. I think we also definitely need some clarity and transparency. I mean, like, how many people know that your ability to get a credit card, for instance, and I'm not even talking about LLMs, I'm talking about, earlier versions of algorithmic matching, like, are done via algorithmic systems, right? And that there is no way to get recourse, grievance, or any kind of mechanism of asking the question. And now, and if you just apply that to, social entitlements, you apply that to insurance, you apply that to jobs, the harms are going to be so much more, that there needs to be, and not just like transparency, but I think negotiation is what I would like feel like we need to aim for.
We need to have different kinds of guardrails, although that's not a favorite word for Astha. So clearly, whatever we want to call, definitely regulation that can bring down all these different factors, whether for model makers, of course, they can do a whole lot of things in the form of system prompts or constitutional AI. They can bring more accountability and transparency in terms of how they label and source training data. And for platforms, labeling is the bare minimum responsibility, but it has to go beyond that. And the third policy angle is about these sundry actors, right? Dispersed actors, and what Neeraj calls downstream applications, etc. So these are really emerging fields where accessible image generators are being used to produce all manner of content. So a third regulatory intervention should be around these actors. And how do we implement ethics of AI use? Because for them, these ethics are nebulous, negotiable, or simply untranslatable into action.
For example, Amazon has Rufus. Rufus is their live shopping assistant. Like if you ask Rufus about a particular product and Rufus says X is better than Y, and imagine if Rufus is paid to say that by X, that will create a big problem in law for the model, because where the source of funding will be a little will have to be more transparent for the model's responses, so that the responses, it's like, it's like when you write a blog post on a blog, there is a requirement for disclosure of funding so that your position is verified as not being influenced by where you're getting funded from. Similarly, in the AI context, where the advertisements are sourced and who is the one that is involved in or being able to advertise on the platform will definitely determine and if it has an impact on the content that is being produced by the model at the output side, then that will be a big problem in terms of how to navigate that. But currently, there is no regulatory regime that is present in India, and the best way going forward to resolve this issue would be to have a very sort of clearly defined regulatory regime concerning both consumer protection, concerning transparency requirements in terms of the funding of the firm, especially in the jurisdiction that they are operating,